Hi everybody, this is Mr. Zoeller and I'm here to present a video to you today on the secession of the South and also the election of Abraham Lincoln as our first president. So in this picture here you can see an artist's rendition of what he felt about some of the southern states and their secession as riding on different animals and going off a cliff here. So our main target we're going to be looking at, our objective, is students can summarize the events surrounding the secession of the southern states, and then another video we'll look at the attack on Fort Sumter. So just 1 month after Abraham Lincoln's election in November of 1860, we're going to have South Carolina who's going to leave or secede from the Union. And it's quickly going to be followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Texas, and Georgia. These states are going to form their own country called the Confederacy, or the Confederate States of America, and they're going to be electing Jefferson Davis as their new president. So here's one of the symbols of the Confederacy, or the Confederate States of America. And just to let you know, the word Confederacy has to do with the word Union, so it's a synonym of Union. So it's kind of like saying the United States of America again, but in a different way. And then here is Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, who's been elected. And then Abraham Lincoln, of course, our 16th president of the United States, and he's going to serve from 1861 to 1865. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video and answer the 4 questions down below. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So let's look at Abraham Lincoln taking his oath of office. So on March 4th, 1861, Lincoln is going to become our President of the United States. In his inaugural address, which is the speech he gives before the country, he was looking at the foundations of the Declaration of Independence, that government comes from the people, by the people, for the people, as we'll hear him mention a little bit later. And he believed that U.S. citizens had a right to change their government through the majority consent, which means through the voters, not through just leaving the Union. And so Abraham Lincoln believed that when it comes to the issue of slavery, he promised that he would allow Southerners to keep their slaves, so he's not going to take slavery away from the southern states. However, when it comes to the spread of slavery in the rest of the country, Lincoln did promise, as a Republican, and this is the Republican Party's view, is that they would stop the spread of slavery into the West and just allow it to stay where it's currently at. And then when it comes to protecting the United States government and our workers, Lincoln promised to defend and protect them. So if the Confederacy attacks any United States bases, any American citizens, then he would say, you have started this war, and as the President of the United States, I'll have the right to go and to go against you for that. And so Lincoln is going to close his inaugural address with, I am loath to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained it, must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched as surely as they will be by the better angels of our nature. So Abraham Lincoln is president, even though a number of states have left our country, is hoping to have them come back peacefully without bloodshed. But we're going to find out later that that's not going to be possible with the attack on Fort Sumter. And so here's some images representing the inauguration of Abraham Lincoln. Another picture here. And then this is one of the photographs that we have. So you can see Abraham Lincoln right here giving his inaugural address to the people. And most likely the only people that could hear him would be those right next to him. So people are going to be kind of talking to each other and sharing what they think that Lincoln is saying in the speech. And those of you going to Washington, D.C., you can find Lincoln's first inaugural address within the Lincoln Memorial when you're there. So I want you to go ahead and pause this video and answer the last questions down below. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what happened at Fort Sumter in South Carolina. So Abraham Lincoln is trying to prevent a war between the United States and the Confederacy. And so the spark that's going to start the Civil War is going to take place at this fort here in the Charleston Harbor in South Carolina, which is Fort Sumter. The Confederates were determined to take control of this fortress that prevented ships from coming into the harbor, and they surrounded it with heavy guns, with cannons. And so instead of surrendering the fort, Abraham Lincoln decided to send in ships to provide some resupplies to the fort, and the Confederate officials demanded that the federal troops within the fort surrender and evacuate. The fort's commander, Major Robert Anderson, even refused to give up. So before sunrise on April 12, 1861, the Confederates are going to open fire on Fort Sumter. A witness wrote that the first shots brought every soldier in the harbor to his feet, and every man, woman, and child in the city of Charleston from their beds. So the Civil War had begun at this point when the Confederacy now is attacking the property of the United States. The fort, although massive, stood little chance. Its heavy guns faced the Atlantic Ocean, not the shoreline where the Confederates were attacking it from. And after 34 hours of constant attack, Fort Sumter finally surrendered. The last ray of hope for preserving the Union has expired at the assault upon Fort Sumter, wrote President Abraham Lincoln. So let's go ahead and watch this video here about the attack on Fort. So let's go ahead and take a look at some pictures here of Fort Sumter. So here's a diagram picture. So a majority of the cannons, as you can see right here, are facing out towards the Atlantic Ocean to prevent ships coming in, but the attacks are going to be taking place on the back side of the fort facing the land. And so here's a drawing showing the attack on Fort Sumter here. And here's a drawing showing what it would look like inside the fort. Miraculously, no Americans were actually killed in this attack, even though the fort was captured. And then here's a photograph of the fort being taken over by the Confederates. So you can see the Confederate flag up here, and you can see the damage that was done to the fort and the surroundings. And then here's a view from the harbor, from the land point of view of the fort, and you can just see it's been totally decimated here. It doesn't even look like a fort anymore. And this is going to be what starts the Civil War. So the Confederacy is going to be the one that strikes the first blow against the Union. And this war, many think, is going to be over very quickly, is going to last a lot longer, and it's going to cost more lives than anyone wants to. So here's the flag that was flying over Fort Sumter. So it was taken by Major Anderson to New York City and shown around. And this was kind of a patriotic cause for people to stand up and to fight for the Union, for the United States of America. And the idea is that states cannot just leave the country because they feel like they have the right to do so. So taking a look at what do the sides look like now after the attack on Fort Sumter. So after this attack, Lincoln declares the southern states to be in rebellion, and he believed, as being president of the United States, that he had the power to force these states to come back. And so he begins to create an army of volunteers to go and to fight the Confederacy. In response to this, the states of Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas are going to join the Confederacy. And there were some slave states, however, that remained in the Union or in the United States, and that's going to be Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, and Delaware. So they're going to be known as the border states because they're still in the United States, however they allow slavery. And then there are going to be people in the western part of Virginia that voted to decide that they weren't going to secede like the other Virginians had, and they decided to create their own state and stay in the Union. And that is going to be the birth of the state of West Virginia. And this is where West Virginia became one of our states. So let's go ahead and watch this video here about the vote here on the House of Delegates here in Richmond, Virginia, which later is going to be the capital of the Confederacy, about leaving the Union.
The delegate.
So Robert E. Lee is going to be given command of the Confederate Army. And then, as we're going to find out a little bit later. So here are some primary sources showing the reactions of the country to the attack on Fort Sumter. Yeah, so just pause and take a look at these. Here's some more for the Union side. And then Richmond, Virginia is going to end up being the capital of the Confederacy. And so the distance between Washington, D.C. and Richmond, Virginia is just over 100 miles. So the capitals of both sides of the Union and the Confederacy are not that far apart. So when we look at the map, what does the country now look like after the attack on Fort Sumter? The states in the north, including the states over here in the west, are the Union states, which means they're the United States of America. So Abraham Lincoln is the president. For the Confederacy, these 13 states are going to be the Confederate States of America, and Jefferson Davis is their president. And then we will also have Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri, who still belong to the Union, however they allow slavery. And they're kind of teetering on which side should they join. So I want you to go ahead and pause the end of the video here and answer the rest of these questions, 9 through 17 down below. This is Mr. Zoeller. So have a great day. Bye-bye.